My name is Bob Spence, and I'm from Mid-City Electric here in Columbus, where I'm Director of Human Resources. A little background quickly. Prior to joining Mid-City, I spent over 25 years as a consultant, had a company, and we were helping people hire right. We were going in and training people how to interview, how to hire, how to implement the choosing winner system. We were also going in and helping them with search work on a retained basis. Before that, I spent several years in public education, got interested in hiring because I was hiring teachers. And back in those days, when you'd hire a teacher, they went on tenure the second year. I don't think it's that way now, but it was then. So if you made a hiring mistake, anybody in here ever made a hiring mistake? Yeah, hold your hand up. It's a badge of honor. You know, hiring the wrong person, there's a formula to compute the cost of that financially. Take 3 times, you might want to write this down, 3 times their annual compensation. So if they're a $50,000 a year person, that's a $150,000 hiring mistake. As much money as that is, and by the way, that includes a lot of things. Hiring, the cost of hiring, the cost of firing. It includes lost customers, lost opportunities. There's even some places you can find documentation where hiring a key executive has cost a company $6 million, a mishire at that top level. And those are real numbers. But you know, the tragic thing is when you have the wrong person brought in, one, if you brought them in, you've hurt them. And I know some companies, they'll look and they'll say, well, yeah, they're not just the right fit right now, but we'll do with them until we find somebody better. And that hurts that person. The other place it gets hurt is the team. Now, several of you raised your hand and said that you had made a hiring mistake. Think about the impact on the organization of a hiring mistake. Remember years ago I said to my wife, I said, you know, and I was a manager getting ready to go to work, and I said, you know, I just can't go to work today. I just can't face Patricia one more time. I just can't do it. And she looked at me and she says, Bob, you're the principal of the high school. You got to go. She's just a Spanish teacher. Patricia was a mishire. Now why? She taught Spanish, Caucasian, but if you heard her speak, you'd say she was a native Hispanic speaker. She could conjugate like nobody's business. She could translate back and forth English, Spanish perfectly. Technically, she was the perfect Spanish teacher. She had one thing missing. She didn't like kids. Just a minor detail. I learned in a hurry that when I was hiring a teacher or a principal, because I was the school superintendent, I looked for people that liked kids. Really wanted to be with kids. I was principal of a high school. I had 900 students. You won't believe this, but it's true. I knew every student, all 900, by at least their first name. You know the difference that made in the discipline in the school? They felt like they were important. The principal knew my name. Also, it was nice because, is it Stefan?
Stefan.
When Stefan screwed up, now Stefan never did that in school.
He's perfect.
He was perfect. A student, honor roll, citizen of the month. Okay. Well, he made a mistake one day and I saw him running down the hallway and I didn't say, hey you. What did I say? Stefan! Stopped in his tracks. That's where it made a big difference. So anyway, hiring mistake, we don't want to do it because of the money. We don't want to do it because of the impact. Now, what I want to do today is take you through some key points to improve your hiring. First of all, this number 1 on the front page says this: you must have a written mission, vision, and purpose, and core values. If you're going to hire the right people, how many of you have a mission statement for your organization? Okay, if you don't have one, you better get one. How many of you have a vision statement, where you're going to be? Okay, you need one if you're going to hire right. How many of you and your key managers know your driving purpose? You got to know that to hire right. How many of you have your company core values in writing and printed? You got to do that. You got to do it. At Mid-City Electric, we have a mission, vision, and purpose statement, and we have our core values in writing. Now, why is that important? If you hire someone and it doesn't work out, 90% of the time, 90% of the time, it's due to a mismatch with the culture. And think about the people who haven't worked out in your organization. Only 10% is technical. And yet, when it comes to hiring so many times, I can recall one where we had 2 finalists. I was a consultant at the time. And we looked at the 2 finalists and everybody said, wow, this guy is a guru in his field. He knows it inside out. Man, he's going to be hard to get along with. This guy is not a guru, but he knows his stuff. He'll get the job done. He'll exceed expectations. And boy, I like him. He's fun to work with. Which one do you think they hired? The one that was going to be hard to work with. He was there less than 6 months. He was hard to work with. I had a client one time call me and he said, Bob, we need to get a new director of operations. He said, can you fly out here to Salt Lake City and get it started? I said, sure, I'll get my reservations in. I said, next week? He said, yep. So I made the reservation. The next day I get a phone call from him. Did you buy the ticket yet? Yeah. Oh, I don't think we're going to need to have you come out. I said, oh, what happened? I met a guy last night at dinner and he's perfect. You know, the antennae go up. Oh, no. And I've done 8 different hires with this guy. And I said, he's the right guy. He said, yeah, but I'll tell you what. I want you to interview him first. Which I did. And I called the client up and I said, well, I interviewed him. And he said, how did he do? I said, not good. I said, you don't want to hire him, Jim. He goes, but Bob, did you see the resume? I said, yeah, it's a piece of paper with a bunch of words on it. And it looks good. But Jim, in your company, your managers have to be hands-on. They got to be out there rubbing elbows with the people. He's going to sit behind his computer in the office and send out emails all the time. He's coming from a huge company. And your little company, he won't know how to survive in it. Jim said, no, I think this time you're wrong. I said, okay. 6 months later, the phone rings. Hey, Bob, this is Jim. Hi, Jim. You still got that plane ticket? Yep. You were right. I said, well, I don't want it to be a I told you so thing. He said, no, he sat behind his computer, sent emails to everybody. Didn't talk to anybody, never learned a name in the first 6 months. You've got to really look hard at people. You've got to assess people. Now, let's talk about core values for a minute. When you hire people, you want to make sure they fit your core values. And let's say you have a core value of integrity and honesty. I'll bet some of you would if you listed them out. Okay? And when you interview people, you want to ask questions dealing with those core values. Now, I'm going to show you an interview question you could use for integrity and honesty. When I first started, don't panic. Oh, Stefan, you're going to get picked on again. I'm interviewing Stefan, so I say to him, with those who know you best, describe you as a person of high integrity and honesty. What's he going to say? Even if he's a crook. And he's not a crook. Remember, this was my A Student Citizenship Award or whatever. So you ask that, and they're going to say they are. And that's why you ask it, so that they're positioned with that in mind. So then I say to him, tell me about a time when you had to put your job on the line for something you thought was right. Notice what I've done. I've now shifted it to where he has to give me a real-life example of standing up for what? Integrity. Or I could have said to him, well, Stefan, tell me about a time when you had to confront unethical behavior in your department. And if you're a manager, you've had to do that sometime. Now notice what I'm saying to him. Tell me about a time when. When you interview people, that's a key phrase. Tell me about a time when. And so Stefan would tell me about that time. Now, if he did this and said, oh, Bob, you know, I'm honest, I have integrity, and I really believe in being integrous, and I believe in honesty, and I believe in always being straightforward, and there's been several times I put my job on the line for what I felt was right. Now, some people with that answer would have done what? Wow, this guy's something else. He didn't say anything. Think about the answer I just gave to that. Did I tell you about a time when? No. I just talked. My grandpa used to say I would have talked around the barn but never went in the door. So then I say to him, well, Stefan, you're helping me understand your value base a little. Since you commented that you've had several times you've had to do that, tell me about one time. So I come back at him. I don't get nasty about it, but I stay firm. In an interview, some people say, well, I don't want to be nasty. I don't want you to be nasty in the interview, but I want you to be firm. I want you to take a stand and let them know where you're coming from. Let them know what it's like in your company. Because they and you have to fit and match or it's not going to work. You know, I've helped people hire over 300 executives in my career before I joined Mid-City Electric. I've only had one of those 300 get fired. And it's not because of Bob, it's because of a system. A system of hiring. If you look at the second page of the handout, this is the Choosing Winners model. And what I'm telling you is you can either use something like this or develop your own. If you have a system now, if you get ideas today on how to modify yours, great. But you're not going to hire right if you don't have a system. You know, if you're in a company and you're ready to get a new piece of important equipment, whatever that is, and you ask for people to get on a committee to meet with vendors and take a look at all the different options for that equipment, is it pretty easy to get people to volunteer to do that? Answer, yes or no? Yes. Yeah, it is. However, you say, hey, we need to hire a new department head. Who would like to help? The room empties. Got to go. See you later. I got work to do. Nobody wants to help with hiring. You've got to get a system. You've got to put it in place. Now, I don't care if you're a small company or a large company. I have implemented this system in a company of 3 people, and my largest client is a $400 million company. I'm not going to be sexist, but ladies, you might know the company, these guys won't. Brighton Collectibles, ladies' handbags, jewelry. Since 1991, they've been using my system after I implemented it there. And in fact, tomorrow I'm doing an interview for them, for one of their manager hires. And if you talk to the president of that company, he'll tell you, he'll say, you know, ever since I've implemented Choosing Winners, man, it takes a long time to hire. And then you'd hang up and say, well, I'm not going to do that. But if you stay on the phone, he'll say, yeah, it takes me longer to make one hire, but my total time spent hiring each year is less, like 80%. Why? I don't redo. I don't have to rehire and rehire because I do it right the first time. Now, with a model like this, the define step, what I get people to do with define is this. It's real simple. We spell out 3 criteria. First criteria, I call it the who, W-H-O, the who. And that's where you spell out for a given job the values, beliefs, behaviors, traits, and characteristics you want in that person. Now, you can do this for repetitive hires. In other words, say you're hiring a sales team, and you're going to hire several salespeople. You don't have to sit down and do a define for every sales position. But if it's a key hire, like a department head, maybe a general manager, maybe it's the company president, you do a specific sit down and define it and spell out who it is. That's the 90% of the hire. That's why we do it first. And in doing that, you make sure you're really clear what are the values, beliefs, behaviors, characteristics, and traits. After you get done with that, you then say, criteria 2, what? W-H-A-T. You spell out duties and responsibilities, which, by the way, most people do before a hire. But you go a step further than everybody else. You don't just spell out duties and responsibilities. You actually write down what good performance looks like. What does good performance look like? See, what you're doing also with the who and the what criteria is you're developing your interview questions, because you're going to ask questions based upon the who and the what. I had a client one time, we were brainstorming, and that's how we put it together. When we do the define, we have the stakeholders come together and we brainstorm it together. And we decided that for a new financial controller, we wanted someone who would be doing the financials, monthly, quarterly, annual. And we spelled out some performance criteria. So on the initial phone interview, I used this question. What's your first name? Dave? This is not the way Dave is, but he's going to be a guinea pig for me. And you actually don't have to say anything. You just have to sit there and be nice. I'm interviewing Dave, so I say to Dave, and we're on the phone. By the way, I believe in phone interviews. I do a lot of phone interview work before I ever get in front of them. It's cheaper, easier, and faster to get it done on the phone to see if you want to devote the time to be in person. So I say, Dave, I see on your resume, it looks like you had responsibility for the financials. Is that correct? He says, well, sure, I have. By the way, this is a true story. And so I said to him, I said, monthly, quarterly, annual? He said, oh, Bob, I've done all three. I said, okay. And I said to him, I said, well, I'm curious. Let's say it's May 1st. April 30th, May 1st. When in May could I anticipate having the financials from you for April? Now, the client had put a performance criteria in there that said within 5 days. So I said that to him, and he says to me, well, I try to get them done by the 15th. The interviewer then said, you try? Yeah, he says, I've never made it. So the interviewer says, this is how you interview people. He said, never made it. You don't need a big, long question, okay? Never made it. He says, yes, Bob, that's true. But I want you to know it's not my fault. So what did the interviewer say? Not your fault? No. It's those darn salespeople. And he goes off on a tirade, criticizing the sales team. All of a sudden he goes, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, I just lost it. So I thought, he's going to take accountability. He says, you know, now that I think about it, it's not the salespeople, it's those guys in operations, they're the problem. What did he tell me from that one interview question? Pardon? Everybody else is to blame. Got to blame everybody. He also demonstrated that he's not going to be a good team player, actually not a very good communicator, not going to get things done on time, he doesn't really care. Now, that's not Dave. Dave was just a guinea pig. He was also a Citizenship of the Month award winner in school. I always like to make that clear, you know, right? Okay. The third criterion defined is called the ticket. When you go to the movies, what do you have to get in? Ticket. If you want to go down and watch Ohio State's basketball team, the ones that just beat Indiana, no offense if you're from Indiana, you have to have a ticket to get in the game, okay? You have to have a ticket to get the job. And by a ticket, I mean this. You have to have certain education, experience, and skills. That's the ticket. Education, experience, and skills. When you put that together, be careful. For example, I've seen people put together a ticket. When they got done, they looked at it and they said, wow, that's a great ticket. That's a great candidate. And I've said to them, Yep, you're right. It's about $350,000 a year base salary. And they look at me and they say, what? I said, you're requiring everything but the kitchen sink. This was for a CFO. They were going to require a CPA, an MBA, a PhD, 15 years experience. You get the picture? You got done. That's good. Yeah, they're out there, but they cost a lot of money. They said, do we need to adjust our ticket? I said, well, not unless you want to pay $350. So be careful when you do that. Be careful you don't make automatic requirements. Sometimes people say, well, shouldn't we always require a college degree? Well, it depends. How'd Bill Gates do? Anybody got any idea? Did he do okay? Yeah. Did he have a college degree? Nope. The late Steve Jobs, how'd he do? Okay. Did he have a college degree? No. Now, am I telling you not to require a degree? If I'm hiring a finance person, I'm going to require a degree in accounting. But there are other places that I'm not going to just arbitrarily do it. Our model then moves after we post the position. And by the way, people always ask me, where do you post? Well, the first place I post is my network. I take the position announcement and I email it out to my network. About 250 people get it. You're saying 250 people would know about that? I said, no. But they might know somebody and then refer them to me. I use Career Builder. I like Career Builder. I use Tech Columbus. I use, at Mid-City Electric, we use the Builders Exchange website because we're looking for people in construction. Stop and think about your industry. What industry sites have postings on them? Use them. But I think you'll find if you can develop your network, that works almost better than anything else. And then with SCORE, our second step, as we're getting resumes in, I don't read resumes. And you're saying, what do you mean you don't read resumes? I just don't do it. I score them. I take the ticket and I put point values on everything that's education, experience, and skills. I give more points to the most important and less points to the least important. And you can construct it however you want to, and it doesn't matter, you can use a 100-point must system, or you can end up with 250 points, it doesn't matter. Just come up with a point system and list your education, skills, and experience and give point values. When you get done then, you can actually take a resume and you have a point value on it. And then you spend your time with the highest scores. It saves you a lot of time. Plus, the first thing you do with a resume is you scan it with your eyes and you look for the requirements you have. If there's a requirement missing, just one, you've got to get rid of the resume. According to EEOC, you cannot hire someone that does not possess all your requirements. Okay? That's how we do SCORE. And then with screen, and bear with, I'm very hesitant to take a drink of water. Ever since Rubio took that drink of water on TV. So whatever you do, don't show this video to somebody when I'm drinking water. I'll turn my back. You can pretend it didn't happen. What I do is screen is I have a structured screener interview. I'll give you an example. And we've developed them on research. You can develop your own within your company. I'm interviewing a manager. The first question says, a manager achieves many things in the performance of duties. What accomplishments give you the greatest satisfaction? And then you have a response guide. You compare their answer to a response guide. The response guide in this case says, developing people or building teams. It was a 50-50 split with a control group we had. If they answer that way, we then use a coding system and say they're consistent with the criteria. It's a structured screener interview. If you want to learn more about those, you can contact, there's an address on this handout of Vision Spark. They now have all my material because I don't do it anymore. I'm strictly at Mid-City Electric. But if you want to learn about that, just give them a call and they'll tell you about it. The probe is like the screen, and then at Confirm, what we're doing is we're having the key stakeholders interview the finalist. And it'll be some team interviews, maybe a one-to-one interview. I'm a firm believer that the person they're going to work for should do a one-to-one. Mary. If I'm interviewing, if Mary's a candidate and she's going to work for me, I'm going to interview Mary one-to-one, and then I'm going to have her peer group, these three folks here, do a team interview, and then these people over here, they're going to be reporting to her. You're going to do an interview. And we have 3 interview sessions with the top 3 people. And then we decide who we want to make an offer to. Make sense? Okay. I'm going to keep right on rolling. I will stop at the end, though, and give you a chance to ask questions. The next page says Bob's hiring tool belt. And by the way, they also, I understand, have something electronic they're going to give all participants, attendees. And I did send them material that's on there, that's expanded on all this, so it'll be on there for you. Anyway, my hiring tool belt. My hiring tool belt is called a tool belt because of my grandpa, who was my mentor. And I think we all need a mentor. He was an electrician, and here I am with an electrical construction company. I'm not sure how that happened. But anyway, he would take me onto job sites, and as a little kid, I used to just marvel at the electricians. They wore tool belts in those days. Our electricians don't wear tool belts anymore. So anyway, he's got a tool belt on. And so I thought, I'm going to call this a tool belt in honor of my grandpa. These tools are used to write interview questions ahead of time or in the heat of battle. Take a look at the first one here, situational questions. What's your first name? Liza. Liza? Eliza, let's assume you become manager of a department that's performing poorly in all areas. What will you do? See how that's situational? I describe a situation to her and say, what would you do? She says, well, in that case, I'd probably yada, yada, yada. Okay. So I say to her, have you ever experienced that in your career? And she goes, oh, have I ever? Tell me about that time and what you did. You go from a situational, what would you do if, to what we call descriptive situational. Tell me about a time when. Okay? Here I am. Have any of you in an interview ever asked somebody their strengths? Put your hand up if you have. I have. And it's okay. It's okay. How many have ever asked their weaknesses? I have. I quit doing that. I don't ask anymore. You know why? I got tired of the same answer all the time. Oh yeah, Bob. People say I try to do too much. Or sometimes I got this one. Well, it's not that I'm disorganized, but I could be better. Oh, please, please. So what I do now is this. I say to the person, we all have areas, I do ask their strengths. And then I'll say, we all have areas in which we can improve. For example, I'm working on, and you share something that you're working on in your growth plan, an area where you want to improve. And then you say to them, how about you? Where would you like to improve? And they'll tell you. Because you've admitted a blemish. So it must be okay to have one. I've had people give me 3 and 4. It's amazing, just because I did it that way. Apples and oranges. Amanda, I see you worked for Stefan for 3 years. Debbie? And you worked for Debbie for 3 years. Compare and contrast their leadership styles for me, please. Okay? So I have her do that. See, it's a comparison and contrasting. The next one is silence is golden. I learned this technique as a high school principal. First of all, before I get into that, silence is golden has 2 parts. When you ask an interview question, don't be like a lot of people. If they don't answer right away, guess what a typical interviewer would do? Immediately move on to the next question. Give them time. You know, watch their behavior. You know, you ask a question, the guy does this. He starts looking up the ceiling. He might be thinking about how to answer it. So give them time. The second part is what I learned as a high school principal. Oh, buddy Stefan came into the office today. And he's been sent to the office by his teacher. So I say, Stefan, please have a seat. And he's in the principal's office. When I was in school, I got sent to the principal's office a lot. I think that's why I became one of them. I wanted to get inside and infiltrate it. The day I got expelled, my mother was not happy. Oh, it wasn't for anything serious. I learned that you're not supposed to fight. But it was self-defense. So anyway, Stefan comes in and he has a seat, and then I pull up a chair, and here's what I do with Stefan. I've sat with kids for 20 and 30 minutes like that. They haven't said a word. I don't say it. I'm not going to talk first. I used to find out everything about the high school that way because they couldn't stand it. They'd finally break. I was interviewing a possible new hire for a director of curriculum. I was a superintendent of schools out in Wyoming. I've lived in Ohio, Oklahoma, Wyoming, California, and now I'm back in Ohio. Moving targets are harder to hit. But I'm superintendent of schools out there. We're interviewing a director of curriculum. And this one lady, I had a lot of concerns about her. So when she came in, and when I think about this story, I can't believe it really happened this quickly in the interview. I said to her, I said, please take 2 or 3 minutes and tell me what you most want me to know about you. By the way, it's a good way to begin an interview, a one-to-one. Please take 2 or 3 minutes, tell me what you most want me to know about you. Most people tell you everything that you can't ask. You know, like I would say to you, well, I've been married 44 years, I've got 2 kids, 2 grandkids, I go to the Northwest Presbyterian Church in Dublin, Ohio. I'm a registered conservative, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything you're not allowed to ask. I just tell you that. And it's okay if they do it. You know, you didn't ask. That's a good way to find out. So I said that to her, and I knew I was in for more than 2 or 3 minutes because educators always go at least 5. Business people, you're lucky to get 2 minutes. But teachers and educators, at least 5. So she went on for 5 minutes. And I thought, I'm going to use silence is golden early in this interview. So when she finished her 5-minute essay, I just did this. I'm good at it. And I probably just did that for about a minute. And then a minute and a half. Finally she says, would you like to hear more about yada, yada, yada? And I did this. So she talked for 3 more minutes. When she finished, I did this. That's how I do it. Okay. So she starts talking again. She talks less than a minute. You got a pen. All teachers and educators come in with a yellow legal pad, not white, yellow, with a pencil. She threw the pencil down. It hit the table with the eraser, flew right over my head. And she looked at me and she says, all right, how did you find out? I'm sitting there, I don't have any idea what she's... So I said to her the only thing I could think of, and by the way, I can still visualize the room. I could tell you every piece of furniture in there. I said to her, it wasn't easy. She then went on to tell me that she had a fraudulent college degree. Yeah. And we were thinking about hiring her. Oh. All because I kept my mouth shut. I have trouble keeping my mouth shut. I like to talk, as you can tell. But oh my goodness, it saved us a lot. What a tremendous experience. Silence is golden. Like I said, I learned it as a school principal. Prove it to me. I'm interviewing old Stefan here, you know, the guy with the Citizenship Award. And he says to me, he says, well, Bob, in my company, they say I'm the most creative guy in the whole company. What do I do? I'm the interviewer. I do this. Well, that's great, Stefan. Give me an example of your creativity. Then I go, what? Silence is golden. Just sit there and watch. 45 seconds, a minute. Stefan finally looks at me and says, I can't think of anything right now. I don't do this. You want to do this. You want to say most creative? Are you kidding me? No, you can't do that. You just move on to the next question. Pete, repeat. How many of you ever heard about the little interview technique called tell me more? You know, they stop talking, you think there's more there, you just say, tell me more about that. By the way, use your tonality. You know, Debbie here, if I say, tell me more about that, she'll want to tell me more. If I do this, you got any more to tell me about that? She figures I'm in a hurry, so she's not going to say anything. And he just wants to get this done. Sometimes that's true. I've had some interviews that by the time I get done, I'm just, oh my goodness. Oh, may they find their right place, Lord, because it's not here. But Pete, repeat, you just take the last word. Debbie says to me, she says, and Bob, that was a real challenge for me. And I say to Debbie, a challenge? See, you can pull more out. A challenge? So you'd want to answer that, wouldn't you? Yeah, she's smiling. Two-step waltz. Any engineers in this room? Admit it. There's got to be an engineer here somewhere. No? Okay. Engineers are good at this two-step waltz. It's the how and the why. If I go up to Amanda and I say, Amanda, how did you do that? She tells me. I'm an HR type. I walk away and I say, hey, thanks, that's pretty cool. Stefan goes up to her, he's an engineer. Amanda, how'd you do that? She tells him. He then says, he doesn't walk away. He stays there and he says, why'd you choose that method? Whoa. Why'd you choose that process? Why that approach? See, engineers do that all the time. I was in a group like this one day and there was a woman in the group and she goes, oh my, that explains the last 30 years. Her husband was an engineer and at home he'd drive her nuts. How, why? It's a good interview technique. You know, because when you ask how, that's one thing. When you ask the why, you're getting inside the head. Okay? Last one, the left-right jab. Mother said to Bobby, that's me, you will not play high school football. I said, come on, Mom, sign the paper. Nope, I'm not going to do it. So I went to my dad. I said, Dad, it needs one signature, not both. Would you sign it? He looks at me and he says, when you're gone, I'm still here with her. I said, you're not signing it. No, I'm not signing it. I found out I could go to do some boxing. I didn't need a parent signature, so I became a boxer. If you look at my face, you'll say, you didn't stay in it very long, did you? I had 2 bouts, lost them both. First one lasted 11 seconds. Walked out, touched gloves. 5 minutes later, I'm waking up with a major concussion. Well, I knew it was major because it was mine. It's minor when you have one. So anyway, I went up and touched gloves and I did this. Where do you think he hit me? Guess. Right here. They said my feet went up in the air and I landed on my head. I mean, it was a great hit. The guy was really something else. My second bout lasted 30 seconds before I did this. I was only out 2 minutes. 2 concussions, you can't box anymore. That's a blessing. So what's that got to do with interviewing? When you ask a close-ended question, now play with me, okay? Just say yes to everything I say, okay? Are you a good communicator?
Yes.
Good problem solver?
Yes.
Good planner?
Yes.
Good decision maker?
Yes.
What do I know about her? Not a thing. See, that's this. I want to do this. So I say to her, are you a good communicator?
Yes.
Tell me about a time when a breakdown in communication created a difficult situation for you. See the difference? By the way, all the things I'm telling you today, you can do them. They're not hard. Just number one, you got to get a passion for it. I'm certifiable. I love to interview. Oh, I'm probably really sick, you know. But I really do. Every time I interview somebody, guess what? I learn something new. I'm with a person I don't know at first. I interview them. I learn about them as a human being. I learn about what they like, don't like. I get ideas from them. Interviewing's great. And when you're interviewing for your company, you have a chance to impact profitability. Because when you bring in the right people, you hire the right people, it improves profitability. That's why it's so important. So I enjoy it. I hope today you pick up ideas that you can go back and say, you know what, I'm going to try some of those things. And the material you'll receive from Kalmbach will give you even more stuff and more detail than what this handout has on it. The last page of this handout says sample interview questions. I want to show you something. Some people are highly creative while others really struggle and do not have many new ideas. How creative are you, Stefan? When I write interview questions, and by the way, I've been interviewing, I'm not going to say how many years because it frightens me every time I say it. I was introduced the other day to give a speech. This person went through my bio. I'm sitting there. She's going to talk longer than I am. She just goes on and on and on. When I finally got a chance to stand up, the first thing I said to the group was, it sounds like I'm 96, but I'm really not. You know, I've got a long, long history. So anyway, when I interview, even with all those years of experience, I never interview without written questions. I will not do it. I don't want you to do that. Do not interview without questions. This is a sample of how you can write questions. The bold is the main question, and then I always have underneath it a couple, 2 or 3 possible follow-up questions depending on how he answers the first part. And then look at in red, it says listen for clear and specific examples, real and genuine. I always have a guide there to remind me what I want to hear, and it's based upon the position I'm interviewing for. So I have my questions written out, and then I make sure that I have my listen for spelled out. This will save you a lot of mishires. Just if you do nothing else other than this one thing with writing interview questions. I hope you'll do more than that. Okay, so now you're down to the point you're going to hire somebody. Make sure you check references. And by the way, in this day and age, you can still get references. I'm usually doing most of my hiring is at upper levels. Our company, our electricians are in the union. My hiring of electricians is real simple. Call the union hall, I need 3 guys. That's the way it works. Fortunately, we've got over 200 we've had forever. So, you know, we don't have to call very often. But when I'm hiring a key person, then I check references. And here's how I do it, and it works. I get 3 people they worked for, you know, their supervisor. And I ask for 3 people they worked with, and they're kind of managed people, so I ask for 3 that worked for them. That's 9. Do I check all 9? Nope. Do I call all 9? Yes. Why don't I check all 9? I can't reach all 9 of them before we have to get a decision made. I usually get at least 2 of each. I do this. I say to the candidate, with those references, give me their names, their relationship to you, and, listen to this part carefully, I want their home telephone number. Or cell phone in today's world. I don't call them at work, because at work, they have the HR guy who says to them, if somebody calls you for a reference, just give them name, rank, and serial number. Don't tell them anything. See, I don't need that in my life. By the way, I don't tell our guys at Mid-City that. I tell them, if you get a call for a reference, you give it. But you tell the truth. As long as you tell the truth, we can handle anything that happens. And don't tell them something like this. Well, when he was here, I heard. Oh, please. That's hearsay. Why would you do that? But anyway, I call them at home. I get tremendous answers. I have fun with it, too, because the whole reference is all positive. I'm asking only positive questions. And at the end, I always say, is there anything I've not inquired about regarding Stefan you'd like to tell me? Guess what happens every time? You haven't asked me about his weaknesses. And I say, oh my goodness, thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot. I don't know how I overlooked that. Could you tell me about his weaknesses? And they tell me. If I'd asked, they wouldn't have told me. It's a little technique that works. I get accused of being James Bond. I have all these spy techniques. They work. Okay, we've hired somebody. I think I got 2 minutes left, right? Okay. Give me another half hour. I gave a speech the other day in Mansfield. The lady said you get 35 minutes. Hour and 15 minutes later, I quit. It was not on hiring. I'm an abstract artist in my other life. It was on all my artwork. So I went crazy with it. I had a good time. Anyway, you hired the person. Make sure you onboard them. That's the new vernacular for that. It used to be called employee orientation. Now they're called onboarding. If I'm going to have Stefan working directly for me, once he's hired, he and I are going to sit down and have a one-to-one. I'm going to ask him some questions. I'm going to say, Stefan, how do you like to receive information? And he's going to tell me. And I said, well, how do you like to give information? And I'll say, let me tell you how I like to give and get information. We do that up front. And then I say to him, here's the position profile we had for this job that you've just been hired for. You and I are going to convert that to your job description. And we're going to take the performance criteria and convert it into metrics so that we can actually measure your performance. Guess what new hires think about that? Whoa, this is great. Really? Yeah, really. That's how we do it here. And then I say to him, you and I are going to meet every Monday at 9 a.m. for the first month. At the end of the month, we'll decide if we're going to continue the meetings or reduce the number. Why do I do that? Because he knows he can get me once a week at least. I want to be more available than that, but it cements in his mind, if the week gets real busy, he knows on Monday morning he's got me. That's called effective onboarding. And then I bring in one of the employees and say, Stefan, I want you to meet your partner, your person who you can go to, your buddy. I don't care what word you use. This person is going to spend the first 60 to 90 days as your helpmate. You can go to this person. Yeah, you know, somebody's got to tell them where the restroom is. But it's someone they can go to, someone they can talk to. And so we do that. See how that works with onboarding? Because if you just bring them in, say, well, I'm glad you're here, welcome aboard. Hope you have a good experience here at XYZ company. And by the way, here's the key to the executive washroom. Call me if you need me. Is he going to call me? No, because if he calls me, it admits defeat. But if he knows he's going to meet with me every Monday at 9, guess what? Then we have a relationship. Okay, any questions before I have to let you go and they open those doors? Okay.
What about hiring someone as their first job?
What you want to, they've never had a job before? You're going to take and approach it a little differently because you're going to want to focus on behaviors and values more than anything else. And so you want to put together questions probing into how they get along with people. And you probably want to draw, if it's their first job, it's going to be college or high school experiences. Draw upon those kind of things. Draw upon things appropriate for where they are. Okay?
What's your experience with hiring within promotion in terms of any preferential treatment versus when you post a job versus having other people from the outside?
Good question. Did everybody hear that? You're going to hire, how do we deal with internal candidates? Here's how I do it as a consultant, how I did it, and how I do it at Mid-City. We post internal and external concurrently. Same time. And we let people know that we're doing it that way. And they're used to that. And then we put the internal people through the same interviews we put the externals through. Because as much as we think we know them, we really don't. I had a situation years ago, a company in Atlanta. He told me, he said, well, let's post internally at the same time. I said, well, that's how I like to do it. I called him up. I was down to my final 6 candidates. And I called. I said, hey, Michael, none of your 7 candidates internally are going to make the top candidates. None are in the top 6. He goes, oh, your process works. And then what I did, though, I met with all 7 of those people afterwards and put together a growth plan for them. 5 years later, 1 of the 7 actually advanced into management. So you can do it that way, or sometimes it might be better to say, let's take a look internally first. Resolve that. If there's no one internally, then we'll go outside. But if you do that, make sure you evaluate and interview your internal people as if they're outsiders. Because if you do that, you'll learn things you haven't seen or heard while they've been on the job. Okay?
How important are exit interviews, or do you do those also? I mean,
always,
okay.
Always. I just did an exit interview with an accounting clerk, because I do it at all levels at Mid-City when they leave. And I should have put, I have actually an exit interview, a whole list of questions I ask. Send me an email, I'll send it to you. It's easy to send me an email. It's just bspence@midcityelectric.com. And if you want, I've got cards, I'll give you a card if you want one. But I do an exit interview because it helps us see if there's things we should be doing differently. And the questions probe into relationships, what they liked, what they didn't like, recommendations from them. You've got to do that. And so I do them at Mid-City, and as a consultant I didn't do them, but I taught my clients how to use the interview. So if anybody wants one of my cards, you have that email address, because you can email, if you want to email me a question, I don't charge for it. And I won't charge for that. I don't charge for anything like that, because I work at Mid-City. I'm just like you, another company, and I'm glad to share. So before you leave, if you come up front, I'll give you a business card. Any other questions? How much time I got?
Would you mind giving us your email address again?
It's just bspence, S-P-E-N-C-E, at midcityelectric.com. And it's Mid-City. We have a hyphen in there, but not on the email. So, but I can give you a card if you want one. Any other questions? Because I think I'm out of time, right? Yeah. Hey, thank you for listening to me. I enjoyed it. Everybody, did anybody learn at least one thing they're going to try? Oh, good. Now I feel better. I'll sleep tonight. Thanks a lot.